Good morning. Hey, no one ever says good morning back. That's nice. In terms of review, we're not going to use any of the things that we learned last day today, but it's worth mentioning what we did last day because it will come back to haunt us a little bit. We talked about data collection quite a bit. Oops, data collection. And we said, okay, I need to have a random sample, right, in order to ensure that my sample is representative of the population. And so we need our sample, or maybe I should say, oh, I changed my eraser, but I want this one. We need to be able to assume, there's a difference there, right? Between being able to assume and to say that that we're able to do something. So we need to be able to assume our sample is representative of the population, right? In order to draw conclusions about the population. Otherwise, you can really only draw conclusions about your sample, and that's not very useful at all. So how do we do that? The main thing that we landed on was if we randomly sample or collect a random sample is really what I mean. We use randomly in our kind of speech these days, and so that makes it confusing, but usually we say we randomly sample, and that implies that we've collected a random sample. What were some of the ways that we could do that? Our go-to is going to be a simple random sample. Which we abbreviate SRS. That's going to be our go-to when we're sampling. But we also talked about stratified sampling or stratified random sampling. And then we talked about cluster sampling. We also talked briefly about multi-stage sampling, but I'll leave it there. And I'll just highlight that the simple random sample is the one that we will be working with. Because if you use these other techniques, you'd need to extend our analysis knowledge a little bit more, just a smidge. But that's not what we're doing today. Call that the end of the review. But any questions about kind of data collection and all that fun stuff? Oh, can't remember what else we talked about. Oh well. So today, chapter 3 is an applications chapter. And so I've posted a data set. And so see the Paralympic, how do I spell that? There, _ 1500 Excel file on Moodle. I'll open it. Okay, so hopefully it'll open on my, I snuck 2 assignments on there. Rude. They're just bite size. They're just bite size. I accidentally set the due date to be January 28th. giving you 2 weeks to do these little tiny assignments. No, I tightened that up to the 21st. So you have until Tuesday. I can bump them till Thursday, I guess. I'll be nice. I'll bump them till Thursday. Maybe you should try them first. They're just itty bitty. They're just itty bitty. I won't be able to adjust the due date on the Moodle dashboard, wherever it comes up there. But if you go into it, I'll adjust the due date there. And if I haven't, then I've forgotten, and then you need to remind me. Okay, so if I go here, can I download? Okay, that's a good start. So I'm trying to open Paralympic 1500. I don't know, not now. I think I might have to do it on my laptop. Because where are my downloads here? I don't know. I don't know. That's okay. First, I'll introduce the data set. But also, let's see here. I'll ask you this. Think about, so the first thing you're going to do when you open this is, how many observations are there? And how many variables? That's a good place to start. While I buy some time, and scroll through the data set. You don't have a laptop, you can buddy up. Let's see here. Oh, what's my meeting ID? Seven, 8, 3. It might chirp if this meeting's being recorded. Cool. Turn that off. Okay. Turn that off. I want to share both screens. Oh well. Here we go. Stop sharing that one. Start sharing this one. Okay. Private window, I don't know. Allow. I did it. Sharing this screen onto here, very confusing. For me, probably, mostly. Okay, so first thing you do when you get a new data set, right, is you're just gonna kind of scroll through and get familiar with what this thing looks like, which is probably what you did. Just you opened a data set and then there it was, and you probably just kind of scrolled through but just kind of think about, what were you looking for, right, when you were scrolling through. And so we're looking for kind of strange observations, right? How big is your data set, right? And so let's see here. Okay. That's how that works. Okay. I wanted them side by side. Okay. How many observations were there? Not, you don't count the first row, right? Because that's just the titles, right? But then you can scroll all the way down. 82. I'll write that down later. It's not that big of a deal. Okay. What's another way that you could do it? If you are scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, right? Then another way that you could do it is you could click this guy here, and there are lots of ways that you can kind of shortcut figuring out how many observations you have. But then you'll see down here at the bottom, it's got a count of 83. So then you subtract the header row, and you get 82, right? And so especially if you've got kind of, 20,000 records, you don't want to have to jump all the way to the bottom. Okay. What's another way you could do it? If I can remember, I think it's good morning. Time to wake up. That's what I should do. Just start class with an alarm, but a nice, like, subtle one. Okay. Let's see if I can remember. So for me, it's Command Shift down. So Command Shift down arrow will highlight all the rows with entries. And then you'll see, so I started at the one I wanted to start counting from, and then my count is 82. So there's lots and lots of ways that you can kind of count things without actually counting them. Okay? And so just kind of tricks you'll pick up along the way. This is a relatively small data set. What's this data set on? It's on Olympic, men's and Paralympic, men's and women's 1,500 meter running gold medalists. Very kind of specific, right? And so they're sorted by year. We have, right, as you click through, what was my next question? How many variables are there? So we've got, well, the year. I would count the year as a variable because it's not really an observation number. It is important to know what year these races happened. And so that's useful information. So I would start that as a variable, right? Usually we say, oh, the observation number is not a variable. Okay, but just because I can't point on my laptop, but here you've got your observation numbers in the row numbers ish, -1 technically. Okay. Or you can create an observation number if you want, but we don't really need it. Okay. And so I have a variable year, okay, which is pretty self-explanatory, I think, just knowing that these are Olympic gold medal, 1,500 meter running times. Right at the very end, we've got the time. Okay. What do you think the city variable is? City is going to be the city where the Olympics were held. Okay. And so that's good to know, maybe. Okay. The country of games is what it's called. Okay. Should probably be the country where the city is in, right? So just kind of similar information. We're given the division, right? So for the first, I don't know, for the first to 1968, looks like it was just men. We know that, right? The Olympics were just for men. And then finally in 1972, it looks like we've got information on both men and women running 1,500 meters. Okay. And so how many years? Looks like I've got a count of 16 down at the bottom. It's tiny, but I don't think I can zoom in on this bottom part. Yeah, I kept saying I don't have a pointer, but I do. Okay, sorry. This is too backbreaky. Okay. I've got a computer pointer. I'll get there. So for 16 years, right? But every 4 years, so quite a long time. We only have information on the men's running times. Okay? And so that's a little tidbit that we've already learned from the data. If you scroll down, okay, oh no, if we move over to the type, okay, you'll see from the start, we've got Olympic, 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 Olympic. And then we've got these T11, T12, T13. And so those will indicate that it was a Paralympic runner. And they've got a fun little introduction on where the Paralympic Games kind of started from. It was for war veterans who still wanted to participate. And so, but we're all aware of the Paralympics, I hope. They're held roughly 2 weeks after the Olympics in the same city. And so T11, T12, and T13 is an indication of visual acuity, okay? And so T11 is completely blind or kind of so blind. So just to kind of level the playing field, I guess, it said they wear blindfolds, okay? And they're allowed to have a runner kind of guiding them. And then T12 or T1, 2, I don't know how to read those. But T12 is kind of a little bit better acuity. And then T13, and I can't remember if the T12 can have a running mate, kind of a guide or not. But I know the T11 was the blindfolded one. Okay, so completely blind. And then T13 is kind of the highest level of visual acuity. And then the Olympic runners, they didn't measure a visual acuity for whatever reason. Well, I guess they don't. So anyway, so 3 different levels of visual acuity, right? How much they're able to see. Those entries don't start until 1984, right? Ooh, spooky, 1984. Right, but then we've got the Olympic record, right? Or the Olympic gold medal time, I should say. We've got the T11 time, we've got the T12 time and the T13 time, and we also have the women's time, right? And so we have quite a few entries for 1984 all of a sudden, because then we start over with the Women's Paralympic Games. So for each year after that, we should have roughly, or at most 6, I guess. But some years we have less if there's no one kind of entered in some of those races. Okay. The name, I'm going to go ahead and guess, is the name of the runner. Fair assumption, I think. Right? Country of the athlete. Okay, so where did this athlete come from? Let's see here. looks reasonable. We also have the minutes and the seconds. Usually because that's how it's shown, I think, on the board, right, is 4 and then colon and then 33.2 or something like that, right? And so that's how it's shown to the public, but we can convert that to a time, right? 4.55 33333 minutes is 4 minutes and 33.2 seconds, right? Time's kind of funny that way with only 60 seconds, right, in a minute. And so then what would you have to do? Take 33.2 over 60, right, to get the decimal, right? The 4 is obvious, hopefully, right? But the 0.55333 is 33.2 over 60, right, as a fraction of 60. And then we get this nice, easy to read and understand time variable, which is just an amalgamation of the minutes and the seconds variable. Usually if you create a variable, so here I'm giving you this variable, but later you might think, I'm going to create this variable, right? Usually if you create a time variable or any variable, you would keep the old variables, right? You never want to remove them. You want to just kind of add on to them, right? So you don't want to change any variables. You want to keep the originals and build onto them, right? Okay, so now, usually what we do is we build what we call a data dictionary. Right? So a data dictionary is exactly as it sounds, right? Just what we went through and we talked about. And so this is more if you've got a complicated data set, right? And you have to share it with a colleague or your boss or someone, right? Then they should be able to go to that data dictionary and say, oh, okay, so the type, okay, I understand what the type is and how you've recorded it, right? What the levels are if it's categorical, right? And so usually we have kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 things. I had to count them out in our data dictionary at least. So what I want you to do, or just follow along, is create a new tab. Okay. And I'm going to call this, I'm going to see if data dictionary is too long. It's letting me. You can change the name of the tab here. And even if I zoom in, it doesn't zoom in here. How can I want to zoom in my whole screen. Command, no. Oh well. So in the data dictionary, I'm going to start with a label up here, data dictionary. And then we're going to create a table. You don't have to actually make a table, right? Excel is a table, right? And so what we're going to do is, first thing I want you to enter is the variable. I give myself a little bit of space. It should be easy to read, right? You're imagine old school. You're printing this off and you're handing it over to your boss. This is what my data looks like, right? Without showing them the data. I have had people print off the data and hand it to me, which is insane. I don't want to see that. There's nothing I can do with it when it's printed on paper, but it can happen. Don't do that. Don't print the data, right? This should give me enough information. So we've got the variable. What do you think the variable is going to have underneath it the variable names, right? So here, each of these we said were variables. Oh yeah, and I guess I did ask you, how many are there? Let's see here. I'm counting 10 to answer my own question. Okay. So, should we get snazzy? Snazzy? I know what you're thinking. I don't know, that depends. It depends. What do you mean by snazzy? So, if I want to copy all these variables, then I can use that same shortcut. So if you click on the first cell, okay, because that's the first one I want to use, and then I want to go all the way over to the right? So for me, I'm on a Mac, but they're all the same. Control, Command, whatever. So Command, Shift, and then right arrow. Send it all the way over to the right. We're able to make that work. Feels pretty cool, right? I know, all these shortcuts. Have you guys seen those Excel? They might be Excel Olympics. They're cool. They're like crazy cool. They're like with that face and everything. Let's see here. So now what I want to do is I'm going to copy these. But that's not how I want to paste them. I want to paste them the other way, which is the transpose. Okay? And so we can paste special, and you should get a transpose option. That's snazzy. You could just type them out if you want. Oh yeah, it's gonna be difficult. I know, I gave up on my iPad a long time ago. It's nice for just kind of quick calculations on there, but it's okay. As long as you think you can recreate the magic later. Okay, you did it. Maybe. There's no shame in just typing those out, right? I just want to show you kind of what you can be doing, right? And it's pretty fun, I think. Okay. And it makes you look cool in the library. Thanks. I knew it. I knew it. I could tell. I know. I really know how to sell it, right? Okay. I'll bold this. Indicate it's a header. So if you've got it copied, then you can paste special. Let's see here. Paste special. And then because I've already pasted it, it doesn't give me the transpose option, but down here it's got the transpose, which will always just take everything and technical term. Okay. So what did we do when we just talked about the data and the variables? Well, we gave a description, right? Which is of course kind of the main thing that we need in a data dictionary. I'll bold that too. Try to be as brief as you can, okay? But also people should understand what this variable is. And sometimes, you know, it's very simple, like the year, right? The year that the games were held, okay? And sometimes, well, all of these, I think, don't require very much. And just to kind of show you where we're heading, okay, I'll call it the type of variable. Okay? That's going to be either numeric or categorical. Okay? And if it's categorical, tell me what the levels are. Okay. I'm telling you that in advance so that you don't have to incorporate it into your description. So you will have an opportunity to tell me if it's numerical or categorical and what the levels are if it's categorical, right? You don't have levels if it's not categorical, right? Oh, let's see here. Ah, there. Nice. Okay. Let's do the first row together. And then I'll let you fly on your own. The year. We already did it, right? The year the games were held. Capital G Games? I feel like it's the Olympic Games. A name. I could be wrong. The year, I'm going to say is categorical. Okay. I don't want to talk about the average year, right? Because that doesn't tell me anything. The Olympic Games or the Summer Games, where the running happens, is only every 4 years. And so then it doesn't really make sense to talk about the average year. And I'd rather talk about kind of lumps of years. Okay. So I'm going to call it categorical. And if it's categorical, we should say what the levels are. Okay. It's every 4 years, starting when? I have to go back to my data set, starting in 1896. And of course, we know that they kept going, right? But our data only goes to 2020. Yeah. Starting in 1896 to 2020. So you don't have to list all the years. That seems annoying. There. Yeah, I'm ignoring that. Yeah. Yeah. So there, yeah. But generally, every year. Nice. But if you included the gap, that's cool. Right. What's one way that you could actually summarize the year? This is kind of a poke around situation. This isn't something that I'm expecting you to already know, but one of the ways I'll show you that you could get a summary of a categorical variable or any variable really that I really like is if you click on the column, so A, so all those things should be highlighted. And then, do you have this analyze data button? This little guy? Yeah. So if you go there, analyze data, it'll kind of suggest some things. Sometimes it's clever, sometimes it's not. Okay. I would say that this table here, right, gives a count of the years. That might be cool. And if I click insert pivot table, it should insert it in a new sheet. Okay. So now, a lot of these years. So in theory, you could list all these years. That's not what I'm looking for, right? But you could see, okay, so here, 1972, we had 2 gold medalists, right? We know it's the men's and presumably the women's, right? And then like we saw in 1984 is where we have 8 gold medals and so on and so forth. So just summarizing a categorical variable, which we're not actually going to get to until next week, but how's that for an appetizer, huh? Okay. So, do you think you can manage the rest of the data dictionary? Even thinking about, right? And if you're unsure of the levels for the division, I'll write them out. What were the levels? Olympic? T11? Or let's say, yeah, T11. Let's see here. What were the levels? Now I see that. Whoops. Stock and type. You guys are on it. Division is, well, how about I get a summary? So I'm going to highlight the division and, whoa, can't do it blind. Looks like it's just men and women. And it gives you a little total count in each category. So whenever I'm kind of curious about a variable, right, often I'll just highlight it and go to analyze data and see what it gives me. Right, kind of scope it out. You don't have to insert the pivot table. You can just snag any information that you need, right? Unless you want to use it later on, then it might be helpful to insert the pivot table. Pivot table is just a fancy table, right, which references cells, and so but it's just the table. Oh yeah, division is I guess the gender of athlete. Which is categorical. Men and women. Do I have? No, I don't. The textbook open. Okay. For the T11, T12, and T13, the T11 athletes have almost complete visual impairment and run with a blackout blindfold and are allowed to run with a guide runner. You could just summarize it as complete visual impairment. Yeah. T12 and T13 athletes have some visual impairment, and the visual acuity of Olympic runners is not determined. Right? You don't need to say that, but you should define what T11, T12, and T13 mean, because that was one of the questions that you would probably have if you were scrolling through the data. You would say, well, I don't know what that means. And so that's what the data dictionary is meant to answer, right? And so if you're unsure of what things mean, right, then you put it in the data dictionary. Sometimes it's obvious, like the division. Right. I would put it in the levels field because the description, I'm trying to keep it shorter. Some data dictionaries have everything in the description, which I find is a little bit overwhelming. And so I only do it if it's categorical. And I want you guys to tell me if it's numerical or categorical. But like a lot of things, just a matter of preference, which if you're coming from kind of the math and the sciences and you don't like that, I want to have choices. I don't want to develop preferences. You'll see there are some things I feel very strongly about. Okay. So that's a data dictionary, right? And so usually we give a data dictionary to introduce a data set. And like I said, it should be kind of explaining everything about your data, and no one should have questions once they scroll through your data. That's the goal. Okay. I did have an idea for an assignment, which I scribbled down last night. And I mean, really scribbled. Let's see here. Where I want you to submit your Excel sheet that we're working on here. And so I want you to work on your data dictionary. Okay. And where is it? Can I do this? I can. Okay. I don't need this up here. I can do it down here. Although it feels so low. Okay. In the Paralympic data, which you're in, which you've opened, probably, create a new tab and label it dictionary. But that's only because I wasn't sure if data dictionary would fit. And so I'll change that to data dictionary because it fits, looks nicer. Create a data dictionary for the variables, which we have already done. All right. And so that's, I want you to complete that. Okay, and then you're going to submit your Excel spreadsheet. Okay. Make sure, so sometimes, as a side note, if I have generated randomized data for each of you, then you'll download it in your assignment, and then it'll save as a CSV, a comma separated values file, which is kind of the most basic form of data. What you'll want to do is you'll want to save it as an XLSX file before you do anything, because even though it'll let you create tabs, they don't save. And how heartbreaking is that, right? I've had people working in the CSV file and it looks the same, but then it doesn't save your new tabs. It just saves the original. I know, terrible. You've been warned. I'll also put a disclaimer, right? First time that we do that, just so you remember. Okay? Because we will be leveraging the tabs quite a bit, right? And I encourage you to label the tabs as you go, right? So you can kind of flip through. You can reorganize the tabs too. Usually we have the data dictionary first, right? And then the data, and then your analyses, probably in order. Okay. But and you should just be able to drag those little tabs around. Okay. Next thing I want you to do is I want you to try recreating something that looks like this. Okay. And so you don't have to have the colors. So all these graphics I'm stealing from the textbook, obviously, and they were generated in R. And so we're not going to be able to get exact replicas, but I think a really good way of learning how to learn about Excel is to try to recreate something, right? You've got this goal and now you can kind of work your way there, okay? So learning Excel or any programming language is really just going to be you Google stuff and you Google stuff and you Google stuff, and then you Google some more till finally you get there, right? And so, because I can write up all the explanations and instructions in the world, but it's not until you need it that it's going to stick. Okay? And so, what is this? This is the country of the games. So, the country that hosted the games, and it's just a count. Oh, I guess in here I can do this. It's just a count, right? So, a lot of these have only hosted once, right? And then it looks like Australia was the first one in line to, well, not first maybe, but the first one in our rows here to host 2 times. And then Japan, Greece, Germany, France, and Australia have all hosted twice. The UK has hosted 3 times. Wow, generous. And then the US of A has hosted 4 times, so hosted the most. Right? And so, right, you can answer a lot of questions with just this bar graph. Like I said, we haven't introduced bar graphs, but I think they're pretty self-explanatory, right? You've got bars indicating the counts for each of the countries, right? For categorical data. I'm just realizing now that these would be the levels of for that categorical variable. You can list them, but you don't have to. Okay, and so here, let's do that. City is categorical, but just the city names, and then the country names. Oops, country, yeah, names. Same thing for the country of the athlete. You can just say country names. We'll have a better way of kind of, oh, I'm not sharing the screen. Okay. With you. Oh boy. There. Okay. Might get a little messy in the recording because it was sharing my Excel. Anyways, whatever. Who knows? So here I've added just country names, city names, country names. You don't have to list them all. And of course, athlete name. Plural, I guess. Athlete's name, whatever. Okay. It was mostly this one that I was concerned about. The levels for the type. So, all right. Now I go and show. So we're trying to recreate, I'll show it on here. Recreate this bar chart, the country of the games. You don't have to do the colors or anything, but what can you do? What can you do when you live in a shoe? Now I'm going to go here because I'm going to go back to Excel. Wow. Really staving off Alzheimer's up here. Jumping between the two things. Okay, I can do it. I can do it. First thing to try, if you're kind of trying to learn about a variable, well, first identify the variable that you want to work with. Country of the games. All right, can do. So let's go in here, and the country of the games is still in column C. One thing to try that'll probably work is this analyze data button. And it does generate the table. It doesn't look the same as the other one. They must have used a subset. Let me see. Weird. What if I insert this pivot? I'm getting different counts. Didn't we say the USA had 4 in that one? But here we're seeing 16. Oh, got it. Got it, got it, got it. Okay, thank you. It's double counting the Paralympic runners and the women's and all that fun stuff. How, well, okay, that adds a layer that I was not trying to get to, but I'm happy with this. This is what I was trying to get you to do. If you can figure out how to filter it by, so it's just showing a unique, I would probably choose what to filter by? Filter by just the men's Olympic, right? Because we are pretty sure that that happens every year, right? For sure. So what could you do? I wonder if it'll do it. All right, let's try it. I'm going to filter here, and I'm going to only show the men and only show the Olympic. And then I wonder if when I do this, the country of the games and analyze data, if it's smart enough to see those. It's not. So then what would you have to do? Or another thing you could do, once you've got these filtered, is you can Command Shift or Control Shift down, copy into a new sheet. And if you paste, I'm going to paste special values. Usually that's only for numbers. If you've done calculations and you want to stop the referencing of the calculations, but it should just retain only what I wanted here. So now if I go analyze data on those guys, now I get the counts, the right counts. But it doesn't want to give me the bar chart. How do I get the bar chart? I can force it. Insert. And then it's got recommended charts. There are no recommended charts. Why not? Oh, because I don't have a count. There. Still none. Hmm. Well, I was trying to recreate that bar graph, but then I wasn't paying attention to the duplicate entries. So it made it harder than I intended. What I intended for you to be able to do was just this, the first thing we did, right? But that's okay. Just because we haven't introduced bar graphs yet. Bar graphs or bar charts, right? But the name is kind of self-explanatory. So that's what I intended for you to do, but then I am stubborn and had to take it all away. Right. Okay. Good. Next thing I want you to do, so usually what we do is we kind of summarize the data like this. I'm holding off on that until we've talked more about numerical summaries. Okay. And so, but we will come back to it and try it, or you will be able to. What I want you to try to do on your assignment, and once we've finished talking about Simpson's paradox, then I'll give you time to try it on your own. But you'll have a week to submit your assignment anyway. So, but what I want you to do is try to recreate something as close to this graph as possible. You will need to Google stuff and you will need to rearrange your data. How's that? So, okay. You don't need this dashed line. This is the Rio Games. And if we look at the legend, right, then you've got the Olympic race times are the light blue dots. So they're down here. Okay. If you think about a race time, the lower the race time, the better, right? The faster you are. Okay. So time is tricky that way, right? You have to really think about what a good time is, right? Usually, you know, we're going for high things, high grades, high, I don't know, whatever, home prices, that kind of thing, right? Whereas race times, usually we want to have a lower time. Okay. So here we've got time on the y-axis, right, as our response variable, and then we're plotting it over the years, right, on our x-axis. Okay. And then here's a clue. We're incorporating a third variable. That's something to Google later, right? Which is the race type. Because then I want to show, right, which race type it was by the symbols. What's interesting is, okay, so the T11, we know they're running with blindfolds and potentially with a guide, right? And so I think it's pretty fair to say that they don't need to be very fast. In fact, I think that around a 4-minute, 1,500 meter run is still very fast. And so, right, they're still running very, very fast. And then the T12s, right, are the little yellow squares. Okay. And the red crosses are the T13s. Okay. Presumably they have even better visual acuity, but I'm assuming there. Okay. Always state your assumptions. What happened here? Here, ba-da, ba-da, the Olympic runner, the Olympic gold medalist, was slower than the Paralympic gold medalist. Yikes. What happened? I don't know. I think it was, they were saying 2016 in Rio. Pardon? Yeah, I don't know. They don't mention any names, I don't think, in the. Oh, was that the controversy? Yeah, in the Rio de Janeiro 2016 games, the T13 gold medal athlete ran faster than the Olympic gold medal athlete. But what's more interesting, I think, we don't have that data, but the top 4 T13 finishers all finished faster than the Olympic gold medal athlete. So that's kind of, I think, even more interesting, is that all these T13s were running faster than the Olympic gold medalists, which, judging by the rest of the data, is unusual, right? So, kind of fun. So you don't have to recreate the dashed line. You can if you want to, but I want to see something as close to, let me close hide the sidebar here, as close to this. Now this is just the men's 1500 meters. So it's just a subgroup of the men's 1500 meters and not the women's. If we look at this, and let's just focus on the T11s, I think it is. The T11 athletes here and the Olympic athletes down here, the men's T11 and the men's Olympic athletes. If you were to fit a line of best fit, which you can do in Excel, if you have a scatter plot, which you'll have, let's make a scatter plot together. How about we do, I'm going to remove all the filters. Let's just do all the data. I want to do the year against the time that they raced. And I think it's going to be X then Y, but we might have to rearrange our data. So if I want to make a scatter plot of year against time, you can click on those 2 columns. And then if you insert, and maybe I'll try the analyze data again, see what it gives me. Oh, it looks pretty good. We could do this one, but I just want the scatter plot. So I'm going to go insert, and then down up here, I can't zoom in on those, but there's an XY scatter. So it's just, right, we've seen a scatter plot or 2 already, right? And so it's just going to be dot, 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 dot. If you click that, you should have something like this. I don't want to connect them with lines. You want to be really careful. It's tempting to connect them with lines, but we should only do that once we have narrowed it down to just one group. But if you click XY scatter, this is all the data. And I'll bump it over here. Oops. Bump it over here. Maybe make it bigger. So this is not what you wanted to do, or what I asked you to do, but it is all the data, and you'll have a scatter plot like this. Let's zoom in here. to add a trend line, it's called a line of best fit. You're going to click on one of these dots, and some of them are highlighted. So I don't know why some of them are and some of them aren't, doesn't matter. But you're going to right click and add a trend line. It'll give you the options to display the equation on a chart, on the chart. That might be nice for later. You can display the R squared value on the chart. We haven't talked about it yet, but we will pretty soon, and so may as well throw that on there. And then this, oops, was put in the worst spot possible. So I'm going to move it. This is the equation of the line. It's subtle, but even in our entire data set, we would find a subtle positive slope, which means what? Generally, running times are increasing, right? As the years go on, right, we're getting slower and slower and slower. And although that might make for a juicy headline, that's not really what's happening, right? And so, because if we go back and we look at the individual groups, right, if I kind of have to eye a line of best fit here, right, this would be on a slight negative downhill, right? So slightly negative relationship. The red dots have a stronger negative relationship, and each of these groups, right, move in a negative direction, meaning we're getting faster and faster every year. Maybe not we, but Olympic gold medalists are getting faster and faster every year, generally. Okay? And so when we plot that trend line and we get a positive relationship, right, that's what we call Simpson's paradox, is if you ignore some of these underlying variables and some of that underlying information, you're going to get a misleading relationship. And so that's just kind of a fun one to remember. Even here, if we go back to this scatter plot, even if you didn't know that there was groupings that you should be taking into account, if you look at this, right, there are kind of clues here that these guys might be separate and behaving separately from maybe these guys, right? And so that's worth exploring, right? So if you see kind of natural divisions, then you should try incorporating those into your analyses. So I've given you a big task. Where is it? Of trying your best to recreate this scatter plot, remembering it's only the men's times. And so that's going to be, I tried not to get carried away on this assignment. That's going to be the last part of your assignment. And so so what I want to do is give you time to work on it, and you can ask me questions, but I do want you to try to tackle it on your own. Like I said, you'll need to Google stuff, learn on your own. And the key thing is, right, a scatter plot is what you're making. A scatter plot inherently has two variables, an X and a Y, right? But you also want to incorporate a third variable, right? And that's going to be kind of the clue to your Google success. Okay? And so I found a video that I liked, that I found helpful, but I'm curious to know what video you used, probably a video or some sort of help site, right? And so I guess it's not the last part. The last part of your assignment is tell me what source you used. I'm just curious. You don't have to cite it or anything. I know. Am I allowed to say that? You don't have to do it properly. Just show me where you got this stuff from. And if you work together with a friend and kind of got there, cool, just write that down. That's fine, right? Kind of anything goes. Last clue, you will need to rearrange your data, right? Filter it, and then maybe snag a copy and rearrange it. This is what we call data wrangling, right? It's kind of a fun image. You've got your data and you're trying to wrangle it, right? Like a little bull. Anyways, all right. Enjoy. Good luck. I'm going to stop the recording because that's all I probably have to say. You can work on it now. You can work on it later, whatever you want. All right. Good luck. And you can ask me questions too, but try it on your own. And how do I stop sharing? Okay.